Hey, everybody. My name is Jim Farmer. I'm the festival director of Out on Film. Thanks for joining us this year. This is our first hybrid festival. We're in theaters this year and we're also virtual. So thank you for taking the journey with us. We have some amazing programming. And so thank you all again for your support. One of my absolute favorites of this year is Invisible Gay Women in Southern Music, which is an extraordinary documentary which explores a group of gay women songwriters who have successfully navigated the male-dominated country music genre and have written #1 songs for some of country music's greatest stars. I am so delighted today to have a lot of people from the film and the director of the film. So I'm going to go around and let everybody introduce themselves. We'll start with TJ and then sort of wrap around the Zoom room.
Hi, thank you, Jim. My name's TJ Parsell, and I'm the director and producer of the film. And I just want to thank you, Jim, for programming us. And we love Out on Film Atlanta. We're looking forward to coming down and looking forward to the conversations.
Thank you.
I'm Sid Bullens, and I was a gay woman in Southern music, or a woman in Southern music, and now I'm the what I call the token trans man of the film, and my story is in there, which TJ tells so well. And I am delighted to be here and grateful to be a part of this whole project.
I'm Dianne Davidson. I don't even know how to introduce myself. I've been alive and in this business for so long, but I just want to say thank you so much to Out on Film. We're really looking forward to being there and also to the performance. And we really do appreciate the effort you've put into presenting this film. And we love you and we love ourselves.
Thank you so much.
Good morning. I'm Bonnie Baker, and being part of this film has been very important to my life and my growth, and so I'm just happy to be here this morning. So thank you, Jim, for having us.
Thank you all for this beautiful work, and thank you for joining us today. I love these kind of Zoom conversations. We can talk to people literally all over the country and record these and have these for later use to look at. And so I just have to start with a basic question. TJ, can you just talk a little bit about the decision to make this film?
Sure, Jim. I have a dear friend in Nashville, Bill Brim. He's my producing partner. And Bill called me up one day and he said, TJ, I got this great idea for a film. Do you want to have coffee? And I sat down with him, and my expectations weren't all that high. Bill's a great guy. He's an artist. But he's never done film, and everybody's got an idea for a film. I of course, wasn't that condescending with him, but I said, what do you got? And he says, gay women in country music. There's this entire network of gay women songwriters who've written for everyone, and many of them are my friends. And I just looked at him and I thought, wow, what a great idea. The more I thought about it, and the fact that he was friends with many of these women meant we had access. So it was a situation where from that time that we had coffee, it was 3 weeks from when I sat down to do my first interview with Mary Gaucher.
Okay.
And then the project just took off. I mean, Mary was in, and I think Jess Leary said, oh, Mary did it, I'll do it. And then Bonnie said, oh, Jess and Mary did it, I'll do it. And Kai says, Mary, Jess, and Bonnie did it. And it just took off like a rocket. So I would say, Jim, that this was a project that chose me. And I just had the privilege to ride along for the last couple of years and spend some time with an extraordinary group of talented, resilient, and brave women. So, yeah.
TJ, was this an industry that you were very familiar with?
Not at all. I had literally just moved to Nashville a few weeks before. I even have to kind of admit that I wasn't a country music fan. I grew up listening to many of the crossover hits, but I wasn't all that familiar with even country music. But I think the thing that struck me most was the journeys that these women had to go through. I mean, I spent 20 years in the software business in the 80s and 90s when, it was not a wise idea to be out. And so for me, it was an industry where people were making a lot of money, and it was very competitive, and people would have used whatever they could against you. So for me, it was a business decision. And I was in the closet and I played the pronoun game, and I know firsthand what that cost me. And so I think when Bill ran the idea by me, I was thinking, I can't think of a more repressive industry than country music. And so I wanted to know, what was it like for these women? What kind of choices and compromises did they have to make, and what did that cost them? And I think that's, where we started, and then we just kept going deeper and deeper and deeper as we explored their journeys.
This question is for all the subjects. What's it like being in an industry, a big business industry where people are making a lot of money, but you yourself have to stifle who you are? Can y'all all talk about that experience?
Okay, I'll go. My story is a little bit different in that I didn't stifle who I was. At 19, 18, however old I was, really finally sort of cemented with myself that I truly was a lesbian, and entered my first long-term relationship, and I ridiculously thought people would be happy for me. That was not true for the most part. Very few people were happy for me, and in the music industry, it caused a lot of slammed doors. So I'm sort of the poster child for, I did it this way and it didn't work much better for me than it did for the people who hid for all those years, except my career pretty much was over at that point.
Yeah, Jim, I think it's probably important to add here. Well, I would imagine that a lot of people watching this Zoom right now may be just coming out of the virtual screening, so they know this story. But for those that don't, the women in our film run the gamut in terms of what their experiences are. Some were in the closet, and some, like Dianne, said, look, there's no closet, or Mary Gaucher says there's no closet big enough for this. So I think that was really interesting for us as filmmakers to kind of like explore, given each woman's circumstances and time that they came into the market, what choices they made, or what was their experience.
Okay, all right.
And I guess I'll jump in my experience as a songwriter only, not an artist. I think that's the difference between Dianne and Sid and I. I came to this world as a songwriter, and you don't think about the pronoun game until you're in it. And that was a constant for me. Is I would write songs for a male artist or with a male artist, and of course the pronouns are appropriate for them. And then I would play a song out. You get invited to play the Bluebird, and I struggled constantly with, do I use the correct pronouns in the song that I've written for someone else? And you don't think about that until you're in the moment of it. And so that pronoun game was definitely something I played for many, many years. I don't think it was ever a secret that I was gay, but where I started to bump up against Nashville is my partner and I, 18 years ago, had a child. And the publisher I had at the time, as we got closer and closer to having a child, I'll never forget, as long as I live, I needed to leave my writing session a little early one day, and I ran in to let her know, hey, I'm going to have to head home. And her response was, I'm okay if you're gay, but I don't want to hear about you having a kid. So, that was 18 years ago. And she literally just was very dismissive in a moment when that's the biggest celebration of most of our lives, is when we're about to be a parent, right? And I'll just never forget, in the car in heading home and going into these, it took 3 days for this one to be born. What should be a celebratory moment was a moment of like sheer fear. Like, my boss thinks I'm weird because I'm having a kid. And you know what I'm saying? It's like you take on this emotional baggage that really should be the happiest moment of your life. And
Exactly.
instead, you're like, am I going to lose my job? Or, that was the first time she had ever spoken that ill of me having a child. Um, but
Bonnie,
yeah,
I'm so sorry you went through that. It really hurts my heart. And I think, part of it may be having a kid myself, but just it hurts my heart so much for your family to have gone through that. And for all the other people who've gone through it, it makes me come to tears. I'm sorry.
oh, well, and here's the thing, at 18, my kid is like in San Francisco this weekend playing a show. So I, we've come through it, right? We all made our way through it. But you just are, I was always surprised at the moment in my life in Nashville when you would run into a brick wall and you didn't even know that wall was there. That's how
Exactly.
I felt. Like I was just tooling along in life and then
Right.
crash. You're in a brick wall. And so that's what I would say to our audience is those little moments when something happens, a parent, a sibling, a teacher, a boss, someone throws something at you and you are completely taken by surprise. I just want you all to know we've been there and we made it through. And you find the helpers, you find the people. And then I had some incredible friends show up at the hospital and bring food and bring books for my kid and be loving and kind. Those are the people that I want to always embrace and thank for being there in those moments where you literally feel like, I was being judged for something of just who I am. So thank you, Diane. I appreciate that. But that was an instance of like just sheer brick wall
Wow.
of like, wow, okay, we are in the South and we are in Nashville, and there's just a lot of belief systems that are very strong here.
Yeah. Thanks, Bonnie, for sharing that, and Diane too. And I feel the same way as Diane. And my experience kind of runs the gamut of gender and sexuality because I started out in rock and roll as a woman, but I was an androgynous woman and came up against my own, and everybody thought I was gay. I was basically asexual when I was young because I had my internal gender issues and or confusion or whatever it was. It wasn't really confusion, I knew, but in the outer world, I had to manage that. And then I got married and had my own kids, and suddenly I was okay. In fact, I can remember being in Nashville um, and talking to my publisher at the time, and he said something to me like, "You're gay, right?" And I said, "No, I'm married and have two kids." And it like blew his mind. So there's kind of the opposite thing of like, and even though, yes, I had had relationships with women, and yes, I didn't, I was living, so I won't go into my whole story, but I was living a straight life at that time. And that's another story on my part. But, and then I divorced and so on and so forth, came back to Nashville as a trans man. And that's been a whole different experience for me
A
in the
new
music,
set of issues. Yeah.
a new set of issues in the music business. And the point is this, is that what Bonnie said is really true. When I was young, I had absolutely no idea that I would bump up against anything that was going to come in the way of my talent, my ambition, and my want. I mean, we're all wide-eyed and bushy-tailed. We're like,
Right.
oh, we can write songs. We can we can play piano or guitar. We can perform whatever it is, and we know we have talent. Those of us in the film are the most talented people. It's incredible, the talent that oozes out of everybody's pores. And so we come in, like Dianne says, as young people just ready to go. And we come up, boom. I was told that I wouldn't be able to, that it was going to take me twice as hard to make it as a woman in the business because I was a woman. And I, like Bonnie, was like, what? What does that mean? Why is that wall there? So there's so many walls up against women, against gay women, now against, I say now because it's me. I mean, it's always been against transgender people. So we're here, and TJ and Bill have given us the opportunity to tell our stories and try to knock down some of those walls, or at least try to make people aware that the music you're listening to in the past and today were written by people like us.
Exactly. I just want to ask you, I remember the film The Gender Line from 3 or 4 years ago that you two worked on. Can you talk briefly about that experience?
TJ?
Yeah, sure. I had heard about Cidny and his story, and was very intrigued and wanted to interview him for Invisible, because I thought, Cidny brings a very unique set of experiences to the story, because here's somebody who's lived both sides of the gender line and has experienced the industry from both perspectives. So I think that's how we started out. Cidny has a one-man show that he does, and he was in Nashville, and I went to see it, and I met with him afterwards, and I said, Cidny, I want to get you in our film. And it was 2 weeks later, we flew up to Maine and started filming him with his grandchildren. And the cut that you saw for The Gender Line is actually very, very close to the first cut of the film.
Okay.
It was, my editor sent it back, we shot it, we, had a strategy. I gave her my notes and she gave me the cut back, and we looked at it and we thought, wow, Cidny's story is so extraordinary. And there's so many wonderful turning points. And it was one of these things, when we looked at the sequence, we thought this is a great standalone short film. So we packaged it up and we put it out there, and Jesus played in over 30 festivals, picked up a number of awards, jury prizes, audience awards. And we thought it was a great calling card to grease the skids, if you will, for Invisible. Okay. And, I think it's done that. It's brought awareness to our project and to the film. So I'm really glad that we did that. I do want to say also that, there was some pushback about having Cidny in the film. We did a test screening of our film before we locked picture on a gay woman's cruise to Alaska. And, there were some women that were saying, well, he's not really a lesbian. And, I think it's interesting or worth pointing out that transphobia comes from all kinds of places, and it exists even within our community. And I think that, ultimately that was one of the why I decided, yes, technically Cidny's not a gay woman, but I think he brings some unique perspectives. And you know what, if it makes some people a little uncomfortable, that's not a bad thing, because that's how we normalize things. So I'm just thrilled that Cidny's part of the film, and it's been a great run with his story.
Sure. Dianne, there's this beautiful, albeit heartbreaking moment in the documentary where you're talking about the album that you did, where you had people say, this is an incredible album, but I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. You feeling that at 21, despite the fact that people love the album, that your career is over. Can you just talk about that sensation? I mean, that must be a horrible sensation at any time, but especially when you're 21 years old.
Yeah, and I was just thinking, I don't know, in the last day or so, for some reason, this feeling came up. And I remember sitting in my kitchen in my little cheap apartment at 25, thinking I'm 25 years old and I have nothing basically at this point. And um, the feeling of, well, I had started really young. I mean, when I started writing when I was 8 or 9 years old, I started playing guitar at 10. I had a band at 11. I mean, for me, there was never any question about what I was going to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing ever stood in my way. Um, so I didn't see the possible roadblocks. So it was, as I said, I was also very naive. I grew up in a really small town and I had a lot of support from my family and from those folks. And um, I just believed with a clear conscience and a good heart and whatever talent I had and whatever drive I could muster, that there wasn't anything to stop me. So it was especially hard, I think, because I didn't see it coming at all, and call it naivete, um, or stupidity. I'm not sure. It was. It really almost got me. It really almost took it all from me. And that's when I decided that I was not going to remain open to the industry that had stripped me of everything that was important to me. So even though I was still involved in some ways after that, before I kind of left the business, it was never the same after that.
TJ, you have some amazing interviews in this film. And again, I've watched this film 3 times since last year. I've watched it twice again this season. But one of the interviews in the film is Shelley Wright. And obviously Shelley Wright had a very public coming out, but there was pushback against that. Nashville did not react especially well. I just wanted to ask you all a little bit about that. Bonnie, what was your personal and professional reaction when there was such pushback to what Shelley did?
Well, Shelley and I had been, acquaintances and friends and run in the same circles, um, and we've had another artist come out just in the last few months, T.J. Osborne. So there's a code among those of us in the business is that we don't we don't tell people's coming out story before they tell it.
Okay.
So certain ones of us knew that Shelley was gay for many years, but it wasn't our story to tell. So, as a friend and as someone in the business with someone, you love them where they are. You allow them to be who they are and where they are at the time. So Shelley, um, had this amazing career going. It was very profitable, very wide audience. She did a lot of work with the soldiers and played all over the world, you know. So when it was time for her to come out, I was relieved for her.
Mm-hmm.
I felt just an exhale that we all kind of did because I knew what that probably was feeling like. I also was a little bit aware of the emotional trauma she was going through, which she spells out in the film. Um, the silence of people that worked with her for years was really heartbreaking. You know, you can support an artist that you've worked with hand in glove for 5 or 10 years. You can support them in the privacy of your own office or phone calls or whatever, but not many people came out publicly to support her, and it really broke my heart. It really was a dividing line between me and a lot of people in Nashville. And I feel the same way about TJ, from Brothers Osborne. TJ came out this year, and the silence has been deafening. I mean, it just breaks my heart that, Maren Morris and Taylor Swift and maybe a couple other artists are the only ones who have publicly said, we support him, we support Shelley. And so the pushback came from radio more so than industry people.
Mm-hmm.
Radio had this, but they're also the ones who burned Dixie Chick records, because they made a statement in London about, the war in Afghanistan, which now 20 years later we're all like, oh yeah, it was kind of a waste, So their point of view has come around to be like, oh, they actually had a valid point of view, but yet radio did this whole backlash to the Dixie Chicks just because they spoke their opinion about a political item. So radio pushed back against Shelley pretty hard. But radio is the most conservative part of our business. Artists who are making bank with radio are not going to stand up and push back against radio with anything because they know that's what buys the big house that they're living in. So the industry people are certain types of people that are more open-minded, but they don't do it publicly. Country radio is just a whole other entity that I won't even try to define. And so at the end of the day, we're all human beings, and I have found that there is this wide range of people, and some people that I really respect in a lot of ways. I really have had a hard time respecting how quiet they were about the Shelley Wright situation, about the TJ Osborne situation. And I don't know. I know that organizations and communities change from within. Um, but man, I've been waiting a long time. I've been here working full time as a songwriter for 27 years, and I'm really, really tired of waiting for people to step into their ability to speak out for whatever issue it is. The gay population in our music is one of those situations. But I will say, a source of hope for me is that we have several out artists that are newbies coming up into our ranks, and they're doing very well, both live and radio, and building an audience and building a career that are Brooke Eden being one of them, and we have several that are openly gay. And we also have several black artists who are doing well, which also makes me happy because Nashville has been very white and very straight for a lot of years. So the pushback on Shelley was expected. It's sad. It breaks my heart for an industry that wants to be artistic and accepted the world over. But they want it done in a certain package. And they wanted Shelley to be white and straight and conservative and keep her mouth shut, and she just didn't turn out to be that artist. And I love her more for it. I love her more now today than ever. So kudos to her, but she did take it just a full on assault on her person. Yeah.
Well,
Jim, it took us probably a year and a half, maybe 2 years to get Shelley attached to the project. And that was even with Bonnie being friends with her and Mary Gaucher being friends with her. And I from my perspective, I thought perhaps she was bruised. Maybe she felt like she gave it the office. But I thought it was so important to include her in the film. There's not a single woman or man in our film who did not acknowledge one way or another the bravery of Shelley and the contribution of Shelley. And so there was part of me that, and I still feel this way, that, that I hope the film will be some kind of vindication for her. And I think that was the motivation for our taking the attack on country radio in the film, because it deserves to be attacked. There's this entity has way too much power. It's controlled by just a couple of corporations, and what they do and what happens at the radio circuit for young female artists like Taylor Swift, who has her butt squeezed as a bet, is appalling, and it should be called out.
Yeah. So. I was doing a Q&A yesterday for No Straight Lines, which is about the rise of queer comic artists and really about how they've sort of risen of late, and gotten the attention that they deserved recently. I couldn't help but draw a parallel to this film, because this film talks about so many extraordinary people in this industry who've been behind the scenes and have written these great songs for artists who went on to get there. But I mean, do you all see that parallel as well? I mean, TJ, talk a little bit about showcasing these artists who've done extraordinary work for decades and really just deserve more of their due.
Yeah, I have to say, Jim, in the beginning of the project, when Bill ran the idea by me, I had this little giddy moment where I was thinking, ooh, I would love to be a fly on the wall when these good old boys find out how much of their beloved country music has been written by lesbians. But as we embarked on the interviews and started exploring the journeys, I realized it was so much deeper than that. Yes, these women have been behind the scenes and have been creating for everyone and have made an indelible impact on the industry, and I think the world. Anybody that's listened to this body of music and has been touched by it have been moved and changed by these women and their contributions. So, it's a privilege to be able to sort of elevate some of that. And,
Sure.
That's our highest hope, is to just, I think Bonnie says it in the film, we all stand on the shoulders of giants. And I think that it's a different world today than the one we all grew up in.
Yeah.
And it's very exciting. And it's because, in no small part, because of the contributions and the sacrifices that these giants, each and every one of them, has made for us and for the young people coming behind us.
Exactly. Thank you for that. We were talking a little bit before we started recording this, and this film has sort of created a family for you all to sort of come together. Can you talk a little bit about that aspect and how this has brought you all together as a family?
Yeah, I'll start and then I'll get out of the way because I feel like I've talked too much. But one of the ways that I love to work in this, and I think it was an advantage in some ways that I wasn't as well versed in country music, because therefore I wasn't starstruck. And with a couple of the subjects, I preferred not to even do a lot of research about them. I wanted to sit down for the first time, the camera over my shoulder, to get to know who this person is. And so that was my experience with Dianne. I had no idea Dianne's story, her background, and what Dianne, we went for about an hour in that first sitting. And I'll tell you that by the end of that session, I was absolutely in love with her. And that has been my experience with every one of these women and with Cidny. They're just extraordinary human beings. And the one big takeaway that I hope people will get from this film is that in spite of all these institutional forces that seem to almost conspire to keep them down, they persevered anyhow. And They're just so resilient, and they're heroes. And I love them. And I feel like I have a bunch of big sisters now. And a new brother. So,
is anyone else? I'm sorry.
I'll jump in because this is one of the most important things to me. So not only was I separated from the music business, the recording industry, because I came out, I also was not very close to most of the other people in this film because I wasn't attached to the music industry in Nashville either. There were a couple of times I had a writing deal when I was young. Then I didn't do that anymore because I was out on the road doing my own thing and I wasn't writing for other people. And then later on, I thought, well, there's no reason to not maybe get back into that. And there were a couple of times I almost signed a writing deal, but it still didn't work out for whatever reason. It doesn't matter why. So I wasn't really connected with these folks in Nashville either. So, I mean, I obviously knew who they all were and respected them immensely. But this film has offered me an opportunity to get close to them in a way that I never have before, or never would have probably. It's not like we have potlucks or anything like that. So I don't know that I would have gotten to know them the way I have. And I think because we've sort of traveled the same road in some ways, in many ways, there's a camaraderie that we feel because we deeply understand what it's been like. And so now we've sort of created this family around that. And it's extremely important to me, as important as anything about this film can be. That's me.
Okay.
And I think other people feel the same way, but I won't speak for them. Sid?
Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, ironically, I knew almost everybody in the film for 30 plus years, with the exception of Dianne and
Mhm.
Bonnie and Shelley Wright. And so for me, it was kind of a reunion of my friends. I knew Kai Fleming, Marianne Kennedy, Jess Leary, Mary Gaucher, and I've been friends for several years. But Kai and Marianne and Jess, and I can't remember everybody who's in it this
Probably
morning, but
Pam, right?
Pam Rose, and uh, Virginia Team, and I mean, I know those people for 30 years, and so it was kind of a reunion, and in fact, I think it was Kai or Marianne or Jess or somebody who invited TJ and Bill to come to see the show. I don't my one person show. I can't remember, but anyway, we were all connected. But to Diane's point, the camaraderie now, the connection now, and the opportunity for me to get to know Bonnie and Dianne, and I still haven't met Shelley, but has been a wonderful experience. And I sit and watch the movie and cry and laugh every single time and feel. I mean, we know each other. We're sitting here looking at the screen, but we know each other's stories. And I think Diane's right. We feel the other person's stories so deeply, that it resonates within us because it's familiar,
Mm-hmm.
And so my heart is full of all these women, and I'm just grateful to be a part of it. And I'm grateful TJ took the chance on a trans man. And, it's an extraordinary experience and let me say one other thing. I'm inspired by their stories. I'm
Amen.
just absolutely inspired by every single person in this film. I have my down days when I think, I can't face one more objection to my life, and I get to go back and say, wait a minute, I have a family here, as Dianne would say, of people who have done and will in the future and today keep going one day at a time. Keep going with music, keep going with family, keep going with life and learning. And that's a big deal.
I have one final question. I know that this film was finished and ready for last year, but obviously because of COVID, you made the decision to hold it till this year. How difficult was that decision? And what's it been like? And what's it finally been able to be like seeing this film with a live audience and having them share this and really appreciate the film?
It's 2 words: fetal position. I was curled up in a fetal position and deeply depressed, and frustrated because I couldn't really talk about it or feel that emotion because people were getting sick and people were dying.
Yes.
So it felt like, we were so ready we had done a test screening of the film in February of 2020 it was actually a fundraising screening at the Belcourt in Nashville.
Okay.
And we sold out 3 weeks in advance, everyone was there. And the film could not have been received. I mean, people were on their feet. It was just incredible. And in a few weeks, we were going to go to Frameline to premiere at the Castro Theater Pride weekend.
Oh,
and
wow.
then 2 weeks later, the world shut down. So we were like as Dianne says in the film, it was this close, and then it was gone. And a number of the festivals wanted to do virtual, and virtual was just people were. My entertainment lawyer was saying, "Don't do it, don't do it." And it was, I think, sound advice, but it was an agonizing decision. But we felt like it was the right decision for the film, and I think it was, because we ended up premiering this year at Frameline, Castro Theater Pride Weekend, and it'll be an experience I'll never forget. When the film was done, Bonnie and Pam Rose and Jess Leary came out, and they sang one verse of Dry County, and the audience reaction was just, I mean, I'm getting choked up just thinking about it.
Sure.
So it was, I think it was the right decision. This is a film that needs to be seen in ideally is seen in a theater.
Exactly.
Where you've got that great sound and you have that communal experience. Because when this is playing to an audience, and especially among our tribe, there is no ambiguity about how the film's landing. You hear it, you feel it. It's just magic. So
yeah, Bonnie, what was Frameline like for you?
Without getting emotional, I'm not a performer. I am a songwriter in my little space. And to be standing on the stage with Pam Rose, which, I'll cry just talking about what she means to me. And then Jess Leary is absolutely one of my songwriting heroes. To be standing between the two of them, first and foremost, but then the honor of standing in front of people that just watched a film that we all put our blood, sweat, and tears in. Probably going to be one of the highlights, that I etch in stone someday. But one of the things to say here is that we are a family. We have all the different pieces and parts of a family. And as someone who kind of was an only child growing up, it has taught me and expanded me in ways that I didn't know was possible. Because the creation of art is such a personal thing that when you join a team to create art, it's a different thing. And this film and TJ, Sid and Dianne, Jess, Pam, Marianne, all of them, Kai Fleming, I have admired from a distance for a long time. And this film has allowed me to admire them close up. And it's an experience I don't know that I can put into words, but I am so appreciative of just the vehicle this film has given us to tell our story.
I would like to just add one thing, if we have just a second. One of the things I'd like for people to be aware of is that we took the film and showed it to Linda Ronstadt at her home. And she was deeply moved by the film and was outraged at the stories she heard. And nobody knows the business better than she does. So I want it to be understood that it doesn't take LGBT plus people to understand this film. That I'm looking forward to being able to reach it out to a wider audience so they'll be able to understand what this is about, and maybe it could open their eyes and their hearts a little bit to our community in more ways than just the entertainment industry.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you. We need to sort of wrap it up right now, but I want to just find out from TJ, what's next for the film?
Well, we're just, well, it's kind of hard to say we're at the beginning of our festival tour, but we started in June, and geez, we're already in 21 festivals.
Wow.
And yeah, it's building momentum, and I think that's what we're trying to do now. We're trying to just get it out there and build word of mouth and build momentum and get distribution, and so that as many people can see the film as possible. And I'll double what Dianne said. Our community gets this, and I'm so grateful to our tribe, and it's so gratifying to see how they're responding to the film. But I think it's important that we also expand, because I think this film speaks to women more generally than just gay women. And I know that from some of the tests that we've done that, well, hell, when we were in San Francisco, when we came out of the Castro Theater, the security guard said to me, TJ, that man in the wheelchair has been waiting for you and he really wants to talk to you. And I went up to him and he said, I'm not gay. I'm obviously not a woman, but your film captured what the essence of what it feels like to be an invisible person that has a handicap. And so I want to thank you for this film. And those are the folks that I want this film to reach as well. So word of mouth helps. So help us get the word out.
Yeah. On behalf of all of us, thank you all for this amazing film. We cannot wait to share this with our audience. TJ, Bonnie, Cidny, Dianne, thank you so much for the film and for
Thank you, Jim.
talk to us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you,
I
Jim.
really
Extraordinary
appreciate
day.
it.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you.